Hi there, this is Aaron with JapaneseAccelerator.com, and today I'm going to go over some useful Japanese cultural points that you can use on your next trip to Japan. So let's get started, shall we? Alright, first things first, no doesn't always mean no, and yes doesn't always mean yes. This is a big topic, and even I don't get everything yet, but one of the main points I want to make here has to do with if you're eating or drinking with somebody and they keep giving you more and more food, it's kind of hard to say no sometimes. So even if you say no, they'll assume that you really mean yes and you want more food. So the best practice here is when you when you're starting to feel overwhelmed with the amount of food or drink that you get, tell your host "kekko desu," which means I've had enough, in a polite way, and they should get the picture. So it can be frustrating, but you'll get around it, especially if you can use the phrase "kekko desu" or "daijoubu desu" to tell them that you've had enough. Alright, the next tip has to do with wearing shoes and the differences between outside shoes and inside shoes being slippers and when to use those. So the biggest point here is do not, I repeat, do not wear your outside shoes inside. This is kind of a basic point. You might already know about this, but I just want to emphasize again, just don't do it. It's really rude. And the inside the house is seen as a clean place, and your outside shoes are seen as dirty, and so it's just a big no-no to wear your outside shoes inside the house or in certain rooms inside of restaurants, places like that. So if you see that there are slippers provided, say in a house, when you enter, those are the inside slippers, and you can wear those inside the house. They even sometimes go a level further, and in the bathroom they'll have bathroom slippers so that you can use those when you're going to the bathroom. If you're wearing inside slippers and they have bathroom slippers, take off the inside slippers and put on the bathroom slippers when you go into the bathroom, and do the opposite again when you come out. Also, if you have inside slippers and you go into a tatami room or a carpeted room, don't wear your inside slippers in there. Take those off and wear your socks or go barefoot in that room. So that's all for this point. Let's go on to the next one. Food tips. You'll notice in this presentation I'm covering a lot about food and drinking, and that's really because if you're in Japan and you're hanging out with Japanese people, or you're hosted by Japanese people, there's there's a really good chance that you're going to be eating a lot. That was my experience my first few times here, and every time I come here to Japan, and it's really easy to feel overwhelmed. But if you know kind of the rules of the road and eating, it can really go a long ways. So one of the biggest complaints I hear about Japan is when people come back, they say, well, it was really great, but it was so expensive. Well, one of the reasons it was so expensive for so many people is because they spent so much money on food. But in Japan, as anywhere else, there are all price ranges of food. And ramen, for example, is really good and cheap. It's way healthier than what you would think of in, pre-packaged ramen in the United States. They actually have ramen restaurants in Japan that you can go in and for maybe $6 or $7 equivalent, get a full bowl of ramen, get gyoza pot stickers, and also fried rice, chahan with it, and you will be full up and you'll get out of there without bruising your wallet. There are other places too, notably gyudon places are really affordable, and that's kind of rice with meat on the top, and usually these restaurants are really small, especially in big cities like Tokyo and Osaka, and you can find a lot of cheap food along the streets. They usually don't have English menus, but most of the time they have lots of pictures on the menus. But before long, if you stick around with us, you'll be able to figure out and navigate your way around the menus anyways. So if you go before you really master Japanese, then try and find places that have pictures on the menu. When you start a meal, start off with saying "itadakimasu." This is kind of just a polite thing to do, and what everybody does, and especially if you're with other people. When you end the meal, say "Gochisou sama deshita." Saying this is kind of a thank you to whoever paid for the meal, or the cook, or the people who served you at the restaurant or at the house. It's a polite thing to do, and it's also a definitive way to end the meal if it feels like it's dragging out for a really long time and you kind of want to end it. In general, there are a lot of flavors in Japan, a lot of flavors you might not have tried before. Be open-minded. There's a lot of really great food in Japan, and it's not the typical stuff you might think of necessarily. You know, everybody thinks of sushi and maybe ramen and other stuff like that, but really there is just a sea of food here. Everything from grilled meats to all kinds of noodles to different things that you wouldn't even recognize in the United States, but or in the Western world. But it's all generally pretty good, really good if you're me. I really like Japanese food, but get out there and give it a shot. See how it goes. So along with eating, we have of course drinking, and drinking is a way of life in Japan. You know, if you're working over there, you'll inevitably be going out with your coworkers after work, at least a couple days a week for after work kind of drink, and just to unwind a little bit. Even at the local drugstore, for instance, of where I like to go on my trips, it has 3 whole aisles of beer and wine and shochu and osake and everything, and otsumami to go along with the drinking. It's a big part of their culture, and it's kind of a good to know how to navigate at least a little bit of that culture. And the big point I wanted to share with you was the kanpai. So start off, if you're drinking with others, start off with a kanpai, saying kanpai before drinking, and you don't want to drink before the kanpai. That's pretty rude thing to do. So wait for the kanpai and drink afterwards. Alright, so the next tip is that public places are usually pretty clean in Japan, especially by Western standards. So the big point here is you should do your part to help kind of keep it that way, because you'll probably get stink eye, as they say in Hawaii, or kind of the evil eye if you splash some water around when you're washing your hands and you leave soap on the counter or a paper towel on the floor or something. It's kind of up to you to help keep it clean, and that's why areas are so clean, is because everybody kind of does their part. So another thing to cover here is that some bathrooms, especially out in the countryside, don't have hand dryers or paper towels. So the way you dry your hands is you bring your own handkerchief into the bathroom with you, and when you leave after washing your hands, you dry your hands with the handkerchief. So it's a good thing to always carry a handkerchief with you in Japan, because otherwise you might be left with wet hands after using a bathroom. So that's all for today's tips. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful for you. Just wanted to give you a quick plug about Japanese Accelerator. If you are really serious about learning Japanese, and specifically learning Japanese conversation, there really isn't any tool out there like Japanese Accelerator. It allows you to put yourself in an actual conversation with a native speaker on your computer, and simulate what that conversation would be like while recording it, and playing it back to yourself later so you can see how it flows. The program and the idea was developed by researchers at the University of Washington, and it is really something else. Check it out, JapaneseAccelerator.com, and have a great day. Bye.